Netanyahu's cabinet votes unanimously to ban Al Jazeera in the territory of Israel.
I wanna start a revolution.
All right, guys, hello and welcome to another episode of Thinking Out Loud. Today we have more coverage of the crisis in Palestine, the horror that's been going on in Gaza. We're going to be focusing today on journalism in the region, especially with the news that Al Jazeera, independent media based out of Qatar, has been banned in Israel. I'm sure any of you guys watching this channel, any of you that are fans or watchers of independent media have used Al Jazeera yourself pretty regularly. They are known for, giving coverage of both sides and giving us oftentimes, especially when it comes to the Middle East or West Asia, analysis that we are obviously not going to see from imperial Western-based media, right? So we have this news coming out that Israel has banned Al Jazeera. There was a unanimous vote from Netanyahu's cabinet. Everyone voted yes to have it banned. The studio was later raided. So we're going to get into an article from Al Jazeera and a video as well from them, kind of going through, picking out the highlights, how we normally do, providing some context and analysis to get you guys the whole story of this. And then towards the end of the video, we're going to try to kind of ruminate on what this means for journalism in the area, what this means for the crisis in Palestine in general, the G word in Palestine, especially in light of the fact that it seems like Hamas had accepted the ceasefire deal only to then have Israel pretty much walk away from the table and then move forward with a series of actions that suggest that the invasion, the conquering of Rafah is right around the corner, right? So let's go ahead and jump into our source material here, guys. Like I said, we have this article here from Al Jazeera. It says, Israel bans Al Jazeera. What does it mean and what happens next? Says here, Al Jazeera said it will pursue available legal channels to protect its journalists from Israel's slanderous shutdown. With that, before we even jump into it, it talks later about they will be pursuing legal avenues in Israel to try to get this overturned. But, just like in the U.S., how a lot of our court systems have been captured from the smallest level to the highest level, have been captured by right-wing fanatics. It's a very similar process has occurred in Israel, right? Especially with the Likud party and other parties that have kind of joined in on that coalition of far-right extremist Zionist politics, right? So I'm not expecting to see much out of that. And as we've seen on the global stage in general around this particular issue of Palestine, I don't know that much is going to come out of that, right? Let's go ahead and jump into the reading here, guys. It says, Israel's cabinet unanimously voted to shut down Al Jazeera in the country on Sunday, immediately ordering the closure of its offices and a ban on the company's broadcasts. Israel's communication minister Shlomo Kari published footage on X showing Israeli authorities, specifically inspectors from the Ministry of Communications, backed by the police, raiding the Al Jazeera office in East Jerusalem and confiscating the channel's equipment. So with this, guys, I mean, just right off the bat, this is another clear example of the idea that Israel is a democracy, a bastion of democracy and human rights in the jungle, right, in the region of the brown Arab savage, is just discredited by this once again. This is not the first time that we have seen Al Jazeera and other media outlets come under siege from the Israeli state, from Israeli officials, because they don't want people to see what the apartheid state actually is. They don't want people to see what the Zionist state really is and how it acts and what this state of Israel is built on, right? So any type of journalist, we have seen countless times over the decades, Israel target journalists, imprison journalists, torture and kill journalists in prison. We've seen snipers target them from a distance despite having clear decals saying that they are press on their helmet, on their flak jacket, on the front and the back. We have seen this endlessly, and obviously since October 7th, we have seen, I believe the last number I saw just recently while I was researching this video, 149 journalists killed by the Israeli state. So this is obviously nothing new. And this instance here, and we'll see some of this raid and footage that we have. This incident here, it's just a clear PR stunt, a clear propaganda win for the Israeli state. It's a domestic psychological operation. See, we're shutting down anyone that wants to speak out against the Israeli state. You know, in this situation where Israel appears not to be achieving its political objectives with the war in Gaza, with the ethnic cleansing in Gaza, it is going for any of these little PR stunts that it can possibly get its hands on to show force, to show machismo, to show bravado, to show the public that is increasingly unhappy, unsatisfied with how the conflict is going in Gaza, especially when it comes to the release of hostages, to show the public that, see, we are taking actions. We are in power here still, right? Let's continue on with this here. It says, why did Israel shut Al Jazeera down? The shutdown comes a month after Israel's parliament, the Knesset, passed a law on April 1st that allowed Israel to temporarily shut down foreign media outlets, including Al Jazeera, if it deems them a threat to security, including anything that has the option of entering or accessing the website, even passwords that are needed, whether they're paid or not, and whether it's stored on Israeli servers or outside of Israel. So this is giving them wide, the Knesset law in conjunction with the vote from Netanyahu's cabinet is giving the government wide powers, not just with Al Jazeera, but to shut down any independent media outlet or any independent journalists in the region. You know, this is a complete attack on First Amendment rights. I'm sure they don't even have First Amendment in the way that we conceptualize it here in the U.S., but on the freedom of speech, but on the freedom of press. And noting on this part here, where it says the shutdown comes a month after Israel's parliament, the Knesset passed a law on April 1st that allowed Israel to temporarily shut down foreign media outlets, including Al Jazeera, if it deems them a threat to security. So this law, like I said, came out April 1st, but there is a long legal history of this in Israel, like we were kind of talking about before. Particularly the fact that all media outlets in Israel, any media organization or any journalist, is subject to a military censor, an IDF, or as we call them, IOF, Israeli Occupation Forces censor. That means any story that is going to come out legally has to go through a military censor. You know, and this is a country that is telling you that it's all about freedom of speech, right? In a region where you have all these Gulf state monarchies that are obviously no bastion of democracy or freedom of speech either, but they've always played that angle of like, look, we have freedom of speech, we have all these different rights, just like you in the West do, right? And what a fucking joke. Every single media organization in Israel has to pass through a military censor. So this is just an expansion of those powers given the existential, really, crisis that Israel has been facing as of October 7th. Additionally, the Al Jazeera television channel is completely banned in Israel, he explained. Within the country, cable providers now show a message that the network is prohibited from the air. Of course, this is reminding me of what happened a couple years ago with the start of the war, of this stage of the war in Ukraine, the banning of Sputnik, the banning of RT. We saw countless independent media journalists that were using that platform, completely deplatformed, and it took them a long time to get a foothold in some of these platforms like YouTube or Rumble and stuff like that. This is a trend that we are seeing out of the empire, out of the Western coalition, you know, the U.S. empire, of open war on journalists. So obviously we have all this with Israel, the recent shutting down of Al Jazeera. We've heard Netanyahu talk about shutting down Haaretz, which is no friend of the Palestinians, but because it's been critical of his administration, its handling of the October 7th crisis, you know, they have been critical of him, so he's talked about shutting them down. Obviously, as we talked about, endless attack on journalists throughout the decades by Israel. But it's not just them, it's the U.S. shutting down of RT. We know that social media corporations are deeply, deeply, deeply in bed with the U.S. State Department, with the U.S. Pentagon, things like that. They use it for spying. They insist that the social media giants manipulate the algorithms to censor certain types of content. I mean, for those of us like myself that have been engaged in politics since really, the early days of the coming of age of the internet, I remember when things would go viral because they actually went fucking viral. I remember when you could get your content out there for people to see, and it's kind of unfortunate for us we missed that bandwagon, but that's because the U.S. State Department, the U.S. government, in bed with these social media corporations, has completely hosed out social media, hosed out the internet, censors Google searches, all this stuff. All of it is deprioritized in favor of CNN, things like that. Even if you watch my channel, you think that if you're watching my channel all the time, it would the algorithm for YouTube would feed you more of my videos, but no, it directs you to CNN, MSNBC, things like that. Obviously, we have the case of Julian Assange still in Belmarsh prison, pretty much being slowly tortured to death over the years due to house arrest in the Ecuadorian embassy and then being in prison. Obviously, we know that they want to extradite him to the United States on the Espionage Act, despite the fact that he's an Australian citizen, so that the U.S. government can torture him in one of its max security prisons. All of these things, guys, we are seeing the Western Empire, as it loses its grasp on power, do everything in its power through its proxies of Israel, through its proxies of corporate media that are subservient to the wishes of the empire, to censor and stifle freedom of speech, freedom of the press, because it does not want people to have alternative means of information so that they can see the decay of the empire, that they can see the depravity of the empire, right? Moving on here, says Akiva Eldar, a political analyst and contributor to Israeli newspaper Haaretz, told Al Jazeera that the shutdown is a very populistic move to feed the beast of the public opinion that is very disappointed from the conduct of the government in Gaza and in the international arena, adding that this also is to please the partners from the radical right. Netanyahu's government relies on support from a band of far-right parties and leaders, many of them like Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and Minister of National Security Itamar Ben-Gvir, holding key positions in the cabinet. So this is what we said at the beginning of the video. None of us were surprised to see this happen. This is a psychological operation for domestic Israeli for the domestic Israeli population, right? And this is the sort of stuff that we see. We've seen it in the U.S. as well. Before I go into more of the reading, though, I do want to play this video from an Al Jazeera correspondent. This was a pre-recorded video because Al Jazeera expected that this would come, especially because they have been at the leading light of revealing some of the worst atrocities of the IOF, right? They saw this coming, so they had this pre-recorded video sort of with a kill switch in the event that their studios were raided and that they were shut down. So I'll go ahead and roll this for you guys without any more commentary.
If you're watching this pre-recorded report, then Al Jazeera has been banned in the territory of Israel. On April the 1st, the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, passed a law that allowed the Prime Minister to ban Al Jazeera. He's now enacted that law. Let me just take you through some of the definitions within the law. They banned our website, including anything that has the option of entering or accessing the website, even passwords that are needed, whether they're paid or not, and whether it's stored on Israeli servers or outside of Israel. The website is now inaccessible. They're also banning any device used for providing content. That includes my mobile phone. If I use that to do any kind of news gathering, then the Israelis can simply confiscate it. Our internet access provider, the guy that simply hosts AlJazeera.net, is also in danger of being fined if they host the website. The Al Jazeera TV channel completely banned. Transmission by any kind of content provider is also banned, and holding offices or operating them in the territory of Israel by the channel. Also, once again, any devices used to provide content for the channel can be taken away by the Israelis. It's a wide-ranging ban. We don't know how long it will be in place for, but it does cover this territory of the state of Israel. Imran Khan, Al Jazeera, occupied East Jerusalem.
Yeah, so that was Imran Khan, correspondent for Al Jazeera, kind of outlining it in a quicker way than I possibly could. Again, guys, what clear instance of fascism do you need, right? Give me 1 second here. This is what fascist states do to hide their crimes, to stifle dissent. They shut down press, they shut down media, they shut down the eyes and ears of the people that if they saw or heard what was going on, they would do something about it. So let's go back into our reading here, guys. Got a little bit more for you. Kari's office said that Al Jazeera is shut down for 45 days and the shutdown can be renewed in accordance with the law. When the law was passed, Netanyahu said he would, quote unquote, act immediately in accordance with it to stop Al Jazeera's activity. However, the timing of the shutdown a month later coincides with crucial negotiations between Israel and Hamas. Al Jazeera has been targeted by Israel before. This is what we were saying. Netanyahu threatened to shut down its Jerusalem office back in 2017, and an Israeli missile destroyed the building housing the broadcaster's office in Gaza in 2021. Many Al Jazeera journalists, and in several cases their families, have been killed in Israeli firing or bombing during the current war in Gaza. Again, the targeting of journalists being slated for murder. And these aren't accidents. These aren't misfires. This isn't a failed rocket meant to hit somebody else. This is oftentimes instances of their houses being stormed at night. It is a drone following them home and waiting till they're in their home with their family, only to blow up, suicide drone, kill everybody in there. This is being targeted by snipers despite the clear. This is why press wear these jackets, press jacket. We have seen all of these crimes, right? And we have seen them for many, many, many years now. What was Al Jazeera's reaction? On Sunday, Al Jazeera released a statement condemning the shutdown, describing it as a criminal act and warning that Israel's suppression of the free press stands in contravention of international and humanitarian law. And that would matter if the U.S. wasn't doing everything in its power to militarily and diplomatically protect Israel from any sort of justice, for any sort of accountability. We do have this statement out of Al Jazeera right here. I can hop into this for you guys. This is out of Al Jazeera, guys. Says, in a deceptive and slanderous move, the Israeli cabinet, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, unanimously voted to shut down Al Jazeera's office. They also chose to withdraw crew accreditations, as well as banning media service providers from transmitting its broadcasts and blocking Al Jazeera Media Network websites. Ironically, as the world marked World Press Freedom Day, the Israeli government closed Al Jazeera's offices, preventing the public from accessing its content, disregarding the universally recognized fundamentals of freedom of expression. Al Jazeera Media Network strongly condemns and denounces this criminal act that violates human rights and the basic right to access of information. Al Jazeera affirms its right to continue to provide news and information to its global audiences. Israel's ongoing suppression of the free press, seen as an effort to conceal its actions in the Gaza Strip, stands in contravention of international humanitarian law. Israel's direct targeting and killing of journalists, arrests, intimidations, and threats will not deter Al Jazeera from its commitment to cover, whilst more than 140 Palestinian journalists have been killed since the beginning of the war in Gaza. The network vehemently rejects the allegations presented by Israeli authorities, suggesting professional media standards have been violated. It reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the values embodied by all in its code of ethics. Al Jazeera urges all media freedom, human rights, and other concerned organizations to condemn the repeated attacks on journalists and the press by Israel and to hold those responsible to account. The network will pursue all available legal channels. That's all we have from that, guys. Pretty strong words coming out of Al Jazeera, and we know, like we said, they'll be following this with a legal strategy of some kind, but I wouldn't hold our breath on Al Jazeera being back online in Israel anytime soon. And if it is, we know that Israel will react with extreme violence. Extreme violence. Going on here, guys, with this, we got a little bit more. Al Jazeera's correspondents can no longer report from Israel, including occupied East Jerusalem. This is because both the main office in West Jerusalem and the office in occupied East Jerusalem were closed and equipment was confiscated. Since the beginning of the war on October 7th, Israel has largely blocked entry in Gaza for foreign journalists, and as such, they have depended on homegrown Palestinian journalists, which are many among the killed by Israel, right? Here we have some reactions. Says, Israel makes much of being a democracy, and I think the idea that it can simply close down an international broadcaster of considerable repute in history is atrocious, Tim Dawson from the International Federation of Journalists said in an interview with Al Jazeera. Sadly, it is part of a long set of actions that the Israeli government has taken to try and thwart free reporting of this conflict. Again, there's from Tim Dawson, the International Federation of Journalists, not just crazy YouTuber Double D with Thinking Out Loud entitled Millennials, right? Even the White House is speaking out against this, guys. We don't support that action. As we said very clearly on World Press Freedom Day on Friday, John Kirby said, the work of independent journalism around the world is absolutely vital. It's important to inform citizenry and public, but it's all important to help inform the policy-making process so we don't support it all. More crap out of John Kirby and Matt Miller as well. They talk the talk. They do not walk the walk. They have done nothing. Biden has done nothing to try to stymie any of the crimes that Israel has done, including its war on journalists. We have this from Minister Yanis Varoufakis, who I'm sure many of you know, posted on X on Monday condemning the shutdown. Israel's banning of Al Jazeera is one aspect of its war on truth. It aims at preventing Israelis from knowing what's going on in Gaza. On X, many others reference Israel's declared plan to launch a ground offensive in Gaza's Rafah, its latest such land assault in 7 months of unrelenting war in which more than 34,000 people have been killed. This last little bit here, guys, he said that other news outlets might also see a shutdown by the Israeli government. We know that there are ministers among the Minister of Communication that are looking at other networks, including Israeli channels. They're not satisfying the government. I don't know what's going on with my news feed here, guys. It's glitching out on me. In November, Kari, the communications minister, threatened Eldar's newspaper, Haaretz, with sanctions over its critical coverage of Israel's war in Gaza, which we have seen, guys. And I originally had the video of them raiding the office that came in with militarized police, seized all the equipment and things like that. But, you know, that's really all I have for you guys on this one. I want to try to keep it somewhat short. Yet another crime by the Israeli state, by the Zionist fascist Israeli state. And like it said earlier, a few sentences back, a couple paragraphs back in this article, this is not a coincidence that this is happening as Israel has rejected that Hamas agreed to a ceasefire and is moving forward, it seems, with its siege on Gaza. We know that they have seized the Rafah border crossing into Egypt, which is one of the only, pretty much the only way that humanitarian aid was going in. There's no surprise that they're shutting down one of the biggest outlets that has been doing real coverage of the crimes Israel's been perpetrating in Palestine as they move forward to lay siege to this region that has 1.6 million displaced people in it. Like we said at the beginning of the video, that analysts and experts are saying is going to be one of the worst crimes against humanity in recorded modern history, right? Again, guys, that's all I have for you. Quick little video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment, all that love, stuff like that. If you want to support our independent media work, you can do so at Patreon, at patreon.com/entitledmillennials. You can support me there for just $1 a month. Otherwise, if you want to make one-time donations through PayPal at paypal.me/entitledmillennials, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated. You guys have really saved me in the past with some of that financial resources, and I really, really appreciate it. But as always, guys, great hanging out with you, great talking the issues with you, and I look forward to speaking with you all again real soon. Bye for now.
I wanna start a revolution.